We've got a wild American soccer playoff weekend to review. North Carolina FC are finished for now, and we get to know Chattanooga FC and MLS Next Pro, that and more on Monday's Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. You found your way to Morning Kickaround, where we cover the American soccer landscape, the ever-changing and evolving American soccer landscape. Welcome on in. My name's Robert Kerr, local soccer guy, and to my side, Jason Davis, radio soccer guy. Hopefully everyone's feeling good on this snowy Monday morning. Welcome aboard. How you feeling, Mr. Davis?
You know, I didn't get the chance to play professional soccer. I was a decent athlete. Soccer just wasn't my thing when I was younger, so I didn't get to turn all that athleticism into a professional soccer career. So I never got to score a goal in front of thousands of people and point to the badge. This is about as close as I'm going to get. Right here, the Morning Kickaround hoodie. I'm pointing to it like I scored just now, Rob. That's how I'm living today.
You're like, we went live today. We went live.
Right. We went live today, baby. That's right. There we go. There, I advanced in the playoffs, in my personal playoffs here on YouTube.
Welcome aboard, guys. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We crashed through the 5,000 subscriber barrier. Be the next to hit that button. And if you want to step it up a notch with your support for the show, become a channel member at MK Ultra. Join up for $3.99 a month. You get all sorts of extras like live commenting, a priority on the live videos, early access to videos, bonus content, and access to the Morning Kickaround Discord server.
We're not that far away from a full 100 members on the Morning Kickaround YouTube channel, 100 MK Ultras. We're not that far away. I feel like it's reachable by the end of the calendar year. Now, obviously, we're approaching that part of the calendar, Rob, where things get real busy. Everybody's got stuff going on. I got a vacation next week. That's just a note for everybody. You know, that's what's happening next week. I'm going to be on vacation. Thanksgiving is coming. We're rolling into the holiday season, but we're going to still be working on stuff. We're going to still be here when we can, and I think we can get there.
Yes, I believe we can as well. And then even if he's going to be on vacation, Jason, I think we'll probably get some stuff cooked up to keep the audience engaged with the channel.
All right, that's a plan. I like it. We don't want to leave them wanting. We got to give them good stuff, and things will happen while I'm gone. And I'm going to be very upset that I'm not going to know what's happening while it's happening, because I'm going to be incommunicado a little bit. So my wife's already told me, you're not allowed to look at your phone. I'm like, God, that's going to be real hard. That's for your guy, Jason, who's been living in this world for the last 20 years. That's going to be difficult.
You got to get one of those implants so where you can just like have it inside your body so she can never take it away from you.
I need some of those glasses that are a thing, I guess, now. Maybe. I don't know.
We'll see. But on this show, we got a great show ahead. We are going to get a first-person reaction to North Carolina FC's last game as a team.
Did we just watch a soccer team die, Rob? That's what I need to know today. Did we just watch an American soccer team die? That's the story.
First-hand account to see if that's true. We'll see later on in the show. We're also going to get an update and get to know Chattanooga and Chattanooga FC in MLS Next Pro. Get the details of one of the forward-seeking, the progressive grassroots team who went from amateur ranks to professional ranks. So we'll
sort of the OG grassroots to pro team in American soccer in the modern era. Very excited to talk about that.
But we have some long balls to get to before that. Review the weekend, talk NWSL expansion and more. So let's get it going on today's Morning Kickaround with today's long balls. Let's go. Monday morning on the heels of a big weekend of playoff soccer across the United States and a Snowmageddon game in Canada. But history did not repeat itself in the first round. Leo Messi, without Suarez, able to shake off the horrors of losing to Atlanta last year, cruising against Nashville in Game 3.
Yeah, showed up. I mean, I feel bad for Nashville, who I liked a lot. Big fan of BJ Callahan.
Yeah, for sure.
Sam Surridge wasn't quite on yesterday. That was or Saturday night. That was necessary for them to be able to win away. And as you said, Lionel Messi is still Lionel Messi. And one of those was a gift. The first one was a gift, but the second one was set up for him. But it was one of those days for Inter Miami where everything started clicking for them. You can see the MLS Cup playoff bracket here on the screen. I've eliminated those play-in games, the wild card matches. You don't care about those anyway.
Get him out of here.
Yeah, so actually this is not updated. My apologies. I took this from the MLS website and apparently it's not the updated version. So we'll just go ahead and get rid of that for now, and maybe I'll come back with a good one. All right, Inter Miami advances. They avoid last year's disappointment. They set up a matchup against Cincinnati. They got to go to Cincinnati. That makes it a little bit tougher. These teams do have history in Open Cup and things, so that's going to be fascinating. That's a Cincinnati team whose calling card really is defending. As much as Evander is fun to watch, Rob, it's really about the defending for Cincinnati. So will they be able to slow down Inter Miami and Lionel Messi? But yes, Javier Mascherano has navigated this. He did the thing that Tata could not. And this is I think, again, if you are not a person who actively wants Inter Miami to lose because of the bad guys, if you want them to be the spice in the MLS stew that's happening right now, then this is good. This is a storyline that people can be attracted to and ultimately could be good for MLS.
So with that result against Nashville, Busquets and Jordi Alba's professional soccer career continues, but unfortunately Darlington Nagbe's professional career ended with that loss against Cincinnati over the weekend. That was a bit of a thrilling one, a late game winner in the Hell is Real Derby. You can't ask for much more from a true natural, even though Miami and Nashville have played each other a million times in just a couple of years. The Cincinnati versus Columbus really bore some fruit. It was a not disappointing matchup there.
Yeah, no, I mean that Hell is Real is something that people know is going to be intense. They know it's going to deliver, at least in terms of that energy in the building, wherever it's being played, and did not disappoint this time around. I do feel bad that this is the end for Darlington Nagbe, a player I appreciate, a guy that I think probably didn't get as much love as he should have in American soccer circles. Obviously, part of that
cool
is
that, though.
Well, yes. I mean, obviously, part of it is that he chose not to play for the U.S. men's national team after a certain point. And, that is, again, his choice. All right. I think I've got the better graphic here for the current updated MLS playoff picture. So, yeah, there you see Cincinnati getting past Columbus. A 2 seed supposed to be the 7 seed. Whatever we think about Columbus, and obviously they've won a championship and all those things, that's a team that took a step back this year, certainly seemed to. Some of the key pieces from those previous teams were not there. Cincinnati has been consistently good, at least again defensively. They may not be the next level team, and that's why it's going to be fascinating to watch them play Inter Miami. NYCFC getting past Charlotte. That's the other thing in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, Philadelphia had already booked their place. Man, NYCFC, they won that game, but there's some collateral damage in the way that went. They had a broken leg in that. I don't know if you caught that, Rob, that there was a serious injury. I think they had lost a couple of players to injury, but one of them, I believe it was Andres Perea, the 24-year-old defensive midfielder, came down wrong. Looks like he broke his leg. That's what I saw when I was watching. I haven't checked on the prognosis, but I don't think that's a player coming back into the playoffs. So they'll be down some bodies going into the next round against Philadelphia, which is going to be tough. That'll be in Chester. And then obviously we had some Western Conference action as well.
Yeah, lots of drama. Probably we may be doing a disservice getting this far into the conversation, not mentioning Seattle Sounders are out. And in the most dramatic style possible, big comeback from Minnesota to force it into a penalty shootout. And could you, when you picture what is the most extreme way to go out in a penalty shootout, it's probably it coming down to the goalies and the goalie shots being the decisive route.
Yeah, look, For Seattle, there are bad ways to get knocked out, and there are super bad ways and absolutely disastrous ways to get knocked out. They were up a man the entire second half, the Seattle Sounders, and they still conceded 2 goals to allow Minnesota to pull level. In fact, they had to score through Jordan Morris to make it 3-3 to even get a chance in the penalty kick shootout. Then you had Stephen Fry, who does love Stephen Fry. He's done incredible stuff in this league. Looks like Stephen Fry might be cooked as a top level MLS goalkeeper. So they bring in the backup, they bring in Thomas, and he proceeds to hurt his finger diving for a penalty, which I don't think ultimately decided anything, but it looked wild that it was happening in that moment. Yeah, the penalty kick shootout itself, Rob, was all over the map. So you had a miss from Minnesota from Joaquin Pereira. You had Jordan Morris miss. You had I think couple of misses towards the end, and obviously we were into sudden death at that point. And to have Dane St. Clair score and Thomas miss, yeah, that's about as dramatic as it gets. And Dane St. Clair talks more trash than any goalkeeper in the league, and for him to back it up is certainly fun.
Yeah, his penalty take was so nonchalant, just kind of like opened the hips, made the goalie dive and slotted it in, and then the CL goalkeeper absolutely tried to load
what Thomas is doing.
He tried to load up the tank gun and put the ball through the back of the net, like just shatter the net, but it clanks off.
Well, that's the kind of goalkeeper he is. You watch his energy. I mean, obviously Dane Sinclair talks trash, but he's kind of like the cool guy out there, as you said, like cool as ice. And meanwhile, Andrew Thomas is much more of a high energy. You know, he looks like the haircut, the look, the whole thing is wild. And he goes in there like adrenaline pumping and blazes it over the bar in order for Seattle to be knocked out and for Minnesota to move on. So Minnesota gets San Diego, who handled Portland last night. Handled it. Watched most of that game, or at least the first half of that game, live, and watched back the rest of it this morning. And obviously, Portland was never really in it. San Diego is the better team, and that's what you do at home. You take care of business.
Yeah, they certainly took care of business to wrap up the weekend in MLS Cup playoffs. But it is should be noted that the next round of the playoffs, we are in a delay. We are looking into the void of an international break here. Next round doesn't start back up until the 22nd. 12 days from now is the next round. And then there's teams like LAFC who didn't play this weekend who have an extra day of rest. So some madness there.
Nothing against internationals, but this is actually a perfect time for me to take my vacation because the MLS Cup playoffs won't be back until the day I get back from my vacation. So perfect timing. I'm ready to go right after I've recharged my batteries. So I'm excited for that.
Good planning there from Mrs. Davis, I assume.
You're saying I didn't plan that? She did. Just happened to work out that way. That you might be right about that. You might be right.
Big news in the NWSL.
You're not right. You're not right about her being Mrs. Davis. And if she heard you say that, she'd be very upset with you. But we don't need to get into that right now.
Fair enough. Good thing I am virtual and I don't have to dodge any shoes or anything coming my way.
Latin naming conventions are slightly different, Mr. Kerr. That's all I'll say.
Well, I assumed so, but we had a chuckle about it, right?
I know. I'm just kidding. I'm just giving you a hard time. Go ahead.
Atlanta getting an NWSL team. It looks that way. Reported last night. NWSL reportedly awarding Atlanta an expansion team for a league record fee, $165 million. Bid fronted by AMB Sports and Entertainment, owners of Atlanta United and the Atlanta Falcons, Blank and Company, if you will. And this will be NWSL's 17th team in the league, and they are set to play sometime after 2026.
Yeah, this is obviously a big deal. I mean, what was the number adjusted for inflation that Blank and Company paid for Atlanta United to enter Major League Soccer? We got that number, right?
It was 70, and then it translates into 93 million, I think it said, with the inflation.
So at the time, $70 million in 2014 to enter Major League Soccer. Now $165 in 2025 to enter NWSL. A record fee. Look, I get a little weird about hyping up these fees, if only because they're on one hand, it means success. On one hand, it means that the league is growing and that people care, and that's great. Like we really we can't say anything negative about that part, Rob. But then you get into like, well, access to the game and all those things. So I guess for the NWSL, until we kind of hit a point of diminishing returns on these on these expansion fees, until it starts to feel like where people are being locked out, or this is really just about corporate elements of sporting interest getting involved in the game, we can celebrate this. This is worth celebrating this. And Atlanta is a place that makes sense for NWSL. Now, I think there is a knock-on effect, and people are wondering about Philadelphia and why Philadelphia is still not an NWSL city, but Atlanta. Let's kind of see how this formulates. Well, I'm going to be very interested in the imaging, the identity of this team. Obviously, they are a club on the men's side that is ambitious and spends money. So will it be matched? Not dollar for dollar. You don't need to spend as much to build a successful team in NWSL as you do in MLS. But will Arthur Blank and whoever is running the NWSL team be as interested in investing at the same level relative to the version of the sport that they are in Major League Soccer?
A little bit anecdotal, but it is a little bit encouraging that Arthur Blank and his group aren't scared away from soccer in America. That, obviously the last few years for Atlanta United has not gone as well, and that hasn't cooled his interest in the game now that they've faced some hardship. I'm sure, if they're winning everything, let's do another team. That's exciting, but you've seen the backswing of the less fun side of soccer when you're not winning, but that hasn't cooled him off on the idea of investing in the game. So that's interesting. Yeah. And another note is you said you didn't want to get too far into the fees for this, but it should be noted that Denver Summit paid $110 under a year ago for their expansion.
Right. Yes, that is worth mentioning. Why the $55 million increase exactly? Not sure. How much of this is a on the level negotiation, meaning did A and B and Arthur Blank's group go into a meeting room with NWSL and say, we'll pay 100? And they went, no, it's at least 180. And they're like, no, we'll pay 115. And they're like, no, it's at least 170. And, did they go back and forth on this? Or is there something else here? I don't know. I mean, that's something we can't really know. Now, this is not formally announced yet. They're expecting that to happen maybe tomorrow. This would be 17 teams in the NWSL. We're not at that point right now where we start wondering how many teams NWSL will max out at, right? 17 is still under the sort of usual 20 that we see in top-level leagues in Europe particularly. Obviously, MLS has zoomed past that, but I imagine NWSL still has an appetite to zoom past 20 as well. And Philadelphia is one of those places, and I'm sure there are several other cities that are already lining up. I think Cleveland made a push at one point for an NWSL team. Will they be involved? Is there something to what Chris is saying here, by the way? Atlanta Metro is double the Denver Metro in terms of size. Maybe there's something to that, right? In terms
more
of the
millions
price?
per population.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, you would think from a NWSL perspective that you want a metropolitan area. You want the reach, the potential fan base that exists in Atlanta. Wouldn't that mean you'd be willing to let them pay less than Denver did? Or is it just because they can pay more that you ask them to pay more? And of course, this is money that goes back into the league. Now, how that is actually done, I don't have a sense. I mean, obviously in Major League Soccer, when a team buys in, that fee is then dispersed among the existing owners to pay them back, right? Their shares are now more diluted, but you're giving them dividends basically on their investment. I don't know if that's the case here for the NWSL.
Going into the comments, I play French horn. For the love of God, do not call them the Atlanta Beat, one of the dumbest nicknames in history. And that makes me think, I'm curious what their naming will be. Will it be Atlanta United, or will it be something completely different?
Well, okay, that's an interesting thing you bring up there, right? And I'd love to know what our ultras think about this, because obviously, if you look at European clubs, invariably they are, except for I think the London team. What is that called? That split off from
I think it's called
Millwall.
London FC.
There's like they're like the Lionesses or something like that. It doesn't matter. My point is, almost invariably, there are women's teams that are part of clubs that have long been men's teams, right? That they're the women's department of Chelsea, of Man United, of Arsenal. That is not the way that we have chosen to do it here. American sports really has never been like that. So instead of obviously instead of even teams that have shared ownership have not been branded the same way. At one point, the Portland Timbers and Thorns had shared ownership for a long time. Obviously, two different brands. And by the way, Portland Thorns is a great brand. Then you have down in Houston, I believe those two teams were under the same umbrella. They're not branded the same. I don't expect that would be a situation in Atlanta either. They're going to have their own identity. Now, I don't have a strong feeling about whether that's good or bad. I think the desire for the women's teams in this country to stand on their own 2 feet and be their own thing and not share their identity with the men's team is that's admirable. That's right in my mind. Plus, you're not dealing with men's teams that have the same kind of weight, the same kind of history, the same kind of pull as Chelsea or Arsenal or Man United or whatever.
It could be argued, though, that of the teams in Major League Soccer, maybe Atlanta United does have that name recognition that could have some magnetism.
Possibly, but it's a boring. It's in the sense that it's a standard men's team name. United is what? I mean, what does that mean? This is interesting. We were tossing around names in the Atlanta United Reddit last night. I said Atlanta Phoenix. This is AKUNJIG. By the way, not an ultra, but we'll let you pass because it's a good comment. Just kidding. Become an ultra. If you did that, I don't mind that. I mean, I know there's that history, right? That Atlanta was burned and then was reborn, and that's the Phoenix element. But if a team ever gets launched in Phoenix, Arizona, you might have some confusion there. So I don't know that they would let them do that, but it's an interesting name.
And we shouldn't pass it by without talking about the results of the NWSL playoffs over the weekend. Chris Shaw saying he named the winners in the Morning Kickaround Discord server. Shout out to our MK Ultras there. Become an MK Ultra, get in that Discord. But he fell completely abysmal for the KC Current players. If you didn't know, KC Current top team went down this weekend.
Huge favorite, right? Based on the regular season, they finished top of the league by 21 points over second place Washington Spirit. Gotham was the 8th place finisher, therefore the last playoff team in. And they managed to win away in Kansas City at CPKC Stadium, the jewel of women's soccer in America. Somehow they pull that off. They were up a goal, right, Rob? And then Kansas City had to draw level in added time, only for Stengel to score just before we got to full time, at the end of extra time, to go to penalty kicks. That's incredible. And I think obviously the rest of the bracket matters here. Orlando, defending champion, they're through past the Seattle Reign. So they have, at least on paper, a big advantage as they will host Gotham rather than having to go to Kansas City. I went out myself to the Washington Spirit game, and Racing Louisville is a plucky team. They've got some players in there. Obviously, Emma Sears is excellent. I thought they had no business being level in that game against Washington. Washington had all the ball, all the opportunities, were unable to really find more than the single. They were unable to find more than a single goal, and obviously that allowed Racing Louisville to draw level. And then we went to penalties. It was intense out there. If you follow me on Blue Sky, you can see a video of the winning penalty save from Aubrey Kingsbury that I put up on my account. So Davis Jason on Blue Sky, if you want to see that.
Yeah, Chris Al saying he mentioned that just like Louisville was on the men's USL championship side, they were a generational team, breaking all sorts of records, so far ahead. And just like the men's Louisville team, they went down hard.
It tells you
that's playoffs.
That's the thing, right? And I know that there will be the European brain will reject this, right? The European mind will say this is not how it's supposed to be. That's not the champion of the league is the team that has the most points. Therefore, Kansas City won the league. In fact, I was doing an interview on the radio for SiriusXM last week. We talked to the leading goal scorer for Phoenix Rising, whose name escapes me right now. He's an English lad, nice lad. Nice English lad. And we were talking to him, and he's like, yeah, we got Tulsa, and they won the league. because that's what English people do when they talk about who finished top of the league in terms of points. They say you won the league. My American brain goes, no. I mean, I didn't say that to him. It was an interview that we were being nice, but my American brain's like, that's not how it works. They didn't win. Tulsa, no offense to our man Tulsa Mario, because obviously they were top of the Western Conference. They weren't even top of the overall table in the USL. They were top of the Western Conference. No offense to Tulsa, but Tulsa didn't win the league. They finished first. And Phoenix had every opportunity to beat them and move on. Obviously, that's not what happened. Tulsa did get the win after extra time, but that's how narrow these things are in American soccer. And I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. I think the playoff format in MLS stinks. I like this knockout situation that the NWSL has. This is true knockout football, but there's nothing that says Gotham didn't deserve to be here. They won a game when the stakes were high, and Kansas City didn't show up enough after their incredible regular season to make that count so they could go for the double.
With the international break coming up this weekend, these semifinals have the weekend to themselves, essentially on network television, no less. On the 15th, we got Washington Spirit versus Portland Thorns.
I would go out again. I would go out again and watch the Spirit play on Saturday, but I'm going on vacation. So, but shout out to my man Matt, who got me to go to that game on Saturday. A very fun time at Audi Field. It was rowdy at Audi. That was basically a full house. I think they announced a sellout. I was in the supporters end. It was 70 degrees in November. I don't know what the heck's going on with that, but it was a wonderful day.
And then on the other side, you have the other two teams in the Eastern Conference playing. So two big games in the NWSL semifinals coming up next weekend. And we are going to talk about the final game in the current existence, at the very least, of North Carolina FC at the end of the program. But here in a moment, we are going to talk some MLS Next Pro and get to know the soccer district of Chattanooga, Tennessee. But got to say, thank you so much for tuning in and subscribing. We're past 5,000 subscribers on the Morning Kickaround Discords, on the channel. And we are coming up on 100 MK Ultras, just $3.99 a month. Gets you early access to videos, bonus content, priority commenting on screen during these live shows, and access to the Morning Kickaround Discord server, which has become so active, it becomes an activity of its own right to catch on up to all these great conversation threads.
I definitely want to tell people that the community is the best part of becoming an MK Ultra, right? You get the access to the Discord, incredible stuff. People are sharing things from their local soccer communities, which I love. That's exactly what it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be a gathering place for everybody who's interested in their version of American soccer. And sometimes that's MLS, and there's MLS conversations, and obviously the national team drives a lot of conversation, but there's a lot of USL stuff, a lot of MLS Next Pro, lower division stuff, high amateur stuff. I mean, Rob's in there talking about Oakland County FC ad nauseum all the time. Can't talk, whatever. Is it SC or FC, Rob? I always forget.
It's football club.
They are a football club. All right. They're a football club out of Michigan, Oakland County. So that's all that's going on there. And I think one thing that you guys can do for us, like whether you want to become an ultra or not, like one thing you can do for us beyond subscribing to the channel and watching all the videos and participating live is to go out and tell your clubs, whoever you interact with, right? Whatever club you interact with, whether it's like Oakland County, which is an amateur club, or whatever professional team you care about. Let them know that we're here, that we exist, and that we're covering stories like theirs, because that's how we get more opportunity to talk to people that are out there making soccer happen, right? We're talking to Sarasota Paradise last week. We're talking Chattanooga today. These are the stories we want to talk about on Morning Kickaround. This is what the place we want to be is for that discussion of American soccer. So let people know, we're going to reach out. But sometimes there are stories out there that we don't even know, or people that don't know that we exist, and we need to kind of sow those seeds, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's all one big community. Good kind of give and take relationship we got with content and conversation going on there. So definitely get on in there if you're able to. Morning Kickaround's Discord server is great, and join part of the community and help enrich all of this. You'll see my photos in the Discord server. I confirmed the Grand Rapids Soccer Stadium is in fact real and is being built right now. So it's good to be on the scene and see that for real. And that's an MLS Next Pro team, which connects to our next segment. And we're going to get to know Chattanooga and Chattanooga FC next up here on Get to Know Your District on Morning Kickaround. Welcome on in. This is Get to Know Your District here on Morning Kickaround, and very pleased to have our next guest on board, Davis GRIZZARD, primary owner of Chattanooga FC, one of the original grassroots teams in the United States that has gone on a journey to the professional world. To detail that and more, Mr. GRIZZARD, welcome aboard Morning Kickaround, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate being on here. Just always excited to talk soccer.
Yeah, we're excited to talk Chattanooga FC and what you guys have going on there. I mean, we were talking about playoffs, Davis. That's obviously a thing we do here at American Soccer. I think you heard a little bit of what we were talking about there with playoffs. We just crowned the champion of the league that Chattanooga FC plays in, with New York Red Bulls 2 beating the Rapids in the final. What do you make of playoffs? You like it? You prefer it to be a single table? Where are you at, Davis?
You know, I love playoffs. I mean, obviously I'm an American, I grew up in that system, but, watching, football around the world, I agree completely with y'all that, if you win the regular season, you are the league champion. It's the harder thing to do for sure is to put together a full slate of 28 or 30 games or how many games you're going to play together to finish top of the table. But the excitement of playoffs is kind of what makes American sports. I mean, people talk about March Madness all the time, and March Madness is an amazing tournament of single elimination. And yes, if you win your conference or you have a great year in the regular season, you get a higher seed, and that helps you. But ultimately, it's the excitement of the playoffs, and sometimes you get playoffed out. You have the best team, you just don't win, and that's the unfortunate side of it. But it's definitely a great appeal for the fans.
So your club, Chattanooga FC, started in 2009 as an amateur club, has inspired many teams to do a similar sort of thing, including Detroit City FC. You went on to play NPSL and then NISA, and then now you're an MLS Next Pro. And so we're just have a little bit of curiosity. We haven't delved into MLS Next Pro too much yet. And so you're one of the few independent teams, as the league's mostly made up of two teams. Kind of explain the entry point in there and how the experience has treated your club so far.
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty rich history for lower division soccer clubs, and that's something that I think has really benefited us, especially in this league. I mean, a lot of the two teams don't have quite the fan base that some of the independent clubs around do, but we're just excited to be in the MLS ecosystem, to be in that environment. I mean, I think when you talk, soccer in America, MLS is kind of the top of the top, and it's nothing against USL. Like, they've done a great job for US soccer as well. But we wanted to be a part of that environment, to be a part of that ecosystem. And when we made the jump from NPSL to NISA, that was the right jump for us at that time, because we wanted to be professional, but we weren't quite put together enough to make a jump fully into MLS Next Pro or USL at that time, and those that allowed us to kind of get our feet wet and kind of understand what the professional game was about versus the amateur side, because there are a lot of differences between the two. And so when we made the jump a couple years ago now to MLS Next Pro, that was the right time for us to do that as well. And we're just excited to have a full season playing against all these amazing clubs. I mean, the two teams that these clubs put out there are just loaded with talent, and you can just see that the U.S. is continuing to grow the sport, and the talent level is just continuing to increase every year, and we're just happy to be one part of that.
Davis, obviously, the history of American soccer is a history of leagues coming and going, clubs coming and going. We are going to be talking about a club that at least is going on hiatus here momentarily after we get finished with you. This idea that there are leagues competing with one another at different levels of American soccer is, it is par for the course, but it's also something we kind of lament. Like, it's not really ideal. And you are in a league that is nominally in competition with USL. In fact, you're one of the few teams that can say we have a crosstown rival that's in in a league that is competing with ours. Can you give us some thoughts on that, and whether that's good, bad? Is it indifferent? I mean, how do you feel about that part of what Chattanooga FC is dealing with?
It's a really interesting question, because it's got so many layers and so much depth to it. I mean, I think if you look 50 years down the road, I'm going to use a large number there just on purpose, that it makes more sense for the U.S. to combine and go into just one league system, whatever that is. And if that happens to be, the MLS or USL or whatever, it doesn't really matter to me. I think that that's ultimately a positive for U.S. soccer. And hopefully that would involve some form of promotion relegation, even if it's just from, second division and down. If you used to have a first division that's, untouchable, if you will, because I understand that the amount of money that some of these expansion fees that people are paying is a little absurd these days. And so it's hard to justify that with it. But, as far as it goes with our, rivals across town, we do have two teams in Chattanooga. It's kind of crazy for a market our size. But luckily for us, it's a 15-minute drive away, but it doesn't really feel like it's in downtown of the city. Our stadium's in, the middle of downtown. Theirs is in East Ridge, which is kind of a suburb. And so we don't typically have a lot of issues there. We're not like the fan bases are kind of in different parts of town. It seems to be working right now. Obviously we had the excitement this year of getting to play for the first time, which was a big deal for us, and unfortunately the game didn't go the way we wanted, but we'd love to play them every year because I think it's something about that would help build a rivalry and just build soccer. I mean, you can't have a rivalry without playing, right? And so it's hard to do that. And so I think if we could get that kind of excitement, especially in Chattanooga, we've already got a big high school system here, and one team is red, one team's blue. We're blue, they're red. Like it all kind of just feeds into the market and could really help drive excitement for the sport, especially with the World Cup coming next year, because all eyes are going to be on us when the World Cup comes.
I'm glad you touched on it. That Open Cup game, Chattanooga versus the Red Wolves, probably one of the most exciting games of the summer, or at very least one of the most exciting games of the Open Cup in 2025. And then I guess, how did it feel? Obviously, the result didn't go your way, but how did it feel to actually face them on the field after so much like boardroom consternation and drama, for the lack of a better term?
Yeah, I came in as the owner in 2019, so it was kind of right on the tail end of that. So I don't quite have the hatred that a lot of the founders do that they went through and the club got started. So for me, I was just excited because, like I said, I think it helps soccer. I think it helps build, the community when you have a rivalry of that nature. You don't have Barcelona and Real Madrid if they don't play each other every year. You don't have, Liverpool and Everton, that's right there in the same town, without that. And so I think it's important to play those games. I think it was a big deal for the city to put 12,000 people into Finley Stadium. I mean, I think that was massive. I'm glad we got to host instead of them, since we can fit more people into the stadium. And I think if we could do that every year, I mean, I just think that's what the sport's about, right? That's what people want. You talked about in the earlier segment about playoffs and the excitement of the playoffs, and fans want to see the playoffs. Well, every time we play each other, it's a playoff game. If you talk to a lot of our fans, it's the biggest game of the club's career, and that's what it is. And so they want to see those games. We want to see those games. I feel like, the U.S. wants to see rivalries in games like that.
Davis, I'm watching the chat, kind of respond to some of the things you're saying, but also kind of discuss where your club is. And I know you said you came in 2019. I know you said being connected to MLS, the highest level of the game in the country, makes sense. One thing that is kind of just right in your face about MLS Next Pro is that because a lot of these teams are the reserve, the development teams of MLS clubs, they're not out trying to drive fans to the stadium. Or if they do try, they're not getting a ton of fans out to the stadium. You guys do great with your attendance for that level. And so you're an outlier. And I know that that MLS Next Pro and MLS is trying to add more independent teams. I think we've got 3 or 4 or 5 maybe coming on, including Grand Rapids, which Rob mentioned, and he's gone out and seen that stadium. What do you think the future of that league is from that spectator side of it? Because when people interact with MLS Next Pro, it's very hard it's very easy rather to dismiss it, because it feels like a high school game.
No, I understand that sentiment for sure. And I think the more independent clubs that we get, the better it's going to be. And if you talk with the leadership at MLS Next Pro, they say that they want it to, have 40 or 50 teams. They want it to be truly a bus league. They want you to have, these local rivalries that you're getting to play against all the time. And if that's a 2-team or not a 2-team, it doesn't really matter at that point. If you're getting to play a bunch of clubs a bunch of times, you're going to build real rivalries with that. And you can tell some of the 2 teams that really try to drive attendance and try to, promote it, and they're seeing the perks of that. And then there are other clubs that don't care as much about, the attendance numbers. And you obviously see that as well. And I think that those teams will kind of split themselves out naturally over time. But, when we get to 40 or 50 clubs, then you'll have half of the clubs will be independent at that point, and you'll have a ton of clubs like ours that will draw fans, that will have attendance, and our fans love going to road games and love supporting that as well. And so you'll just continue to see the road fans at games continue to increase in numbers as well.
Yeah. So I guess what's the outlook beyond this year? Obviously the MLS Next Pro professional season just wrapped up this weekend. Like, I guess what's the upward trajectory? What is the next step for Chattanooga?
Yeah, I mean, right now, we're in full off-season mode. We're recruiting players. We're hopefully going to get a few players here signed before Thanksgiving. That would be a goal of ours. And then, obviously continue to go down. Obviously, when you're not in, the top league in the U.S., obviously the MLS First Division is, and so you kind of got to wait for players to kind of see if they want to, if they get a call up there, get a look on trial, and then it kind of flows down to us after that. And so that's always a struggle that we know that we'll have without being a true top flight team. And so we do our best to work on that. We've got we're in negotiations with several players now that I truly believe can help change our team and help us continue to grow. It was always going to be a stepping stone for us going from NISA to MLS Next Pro. We didn't know exactly what the difference, the level of player we needed and the caliber of player, the style of player we needed, even because the style of NISA is quite different than MLS Next Pro is. And so we did a pretty good job the first year into it. We obviously missed the playoffs on a tiebreaker, but we felt pretty good about our team we put together, but we learned a ton from that. And so this year, obviously, we put together a much better team, got to host a playoff game, which was unbelievable for the city. And we really feel like next year we'll have a team that's even more competitive than that, and hopefully can win a playoff game next year.
So Davis, without opening up your books for us, which definitely you wouldn't do, and we're not asking you to, can you give us a sense of what the leap has been, financially for the club, what the kind of general health of the club is when it comes, I mean, obviously for a club like yours, it's all based on match day revenue, right? So where's the positioning of Chattanooga FC relative to the rest of MLS Next Pro and for the future of the club from a financial perspective?
Yeah, I mean, our three big revenue drivers obviously are our corporate partners, and they do a great job in the city and have helped us grow that, and we really are truly a community club, and so it's more than just the partnership that we have on the field. It's also what we can do off the field, and so I know that's really the key part for us. The game day revenue and the merchandise are obviously the other two big components there, but the club's healthy. I took this ownership position knowing that we weren't operating in the black at that time. It's hard to operate in the black as a third tier U.S. soccer club, but this is a passion project for me. It's something I really enjoy. I grew up playing soccer my whole life. My dad grew up playing soccer, so it's been in my family for a long time, and a little different back in the 70s, I think, than it is now, but we really have enjoyed that and love what Chattanooga can do for the community, and so we're excited to help it continue to grow and fund. And every year we're making strides on continuing to grow the revenue side to help line up with the expenses.
This segment is called Get to Know Your District. So outside of Chattanooga FC, how would you say the health of just the sport is in general now that there's two clubs there? I mean, has there been a boom in growth with the participation at the youth and the amateur levels?
Oh, we're seeing our academy side grow every year. And so I think that's just the nature of, soccer becoming a preferred sport in the U.S. I think if you looked 50 years ago, baseball dominated a bunch of it. You got football and basketball right up there with it. And now you really see soccer as the premier sport that most of the youth today is playing. Obviously, there's concussion issues with football, and basketball you got to be tall for basketball. You've limited out a lot of your people just right from the start. That's one of the things I love about soccer is no matter what size or anything you are, you can play the game. And so it's really accessible to just about everybody. And I think that we'll just continue to see that grow. Obviously, remember when the World Cup came here previously, and then we saw a big explosion of soccer in the U.S. at that time. And everybody's talking about the same explosion happening next year. And I'm really hopeful for that. I think that we'll see it in MLS Next Pro. Obviously, we have one additional team coming in for 26, but I believe, to your point, there's going to be 3 to 5. Kind of depends on how the stadiums go, because obviously everybody's got to build a new stadium, or all those teams have to either renovate or build a stadium. And so I I never want to rely on construction. You never know how that could turn out. But adding more teams, coming in 27 will be great for the league then, and I think it'll just continue to spur more growth.
Davis, the fan base there in Chattanooga obviously is famous at this point. Certainly for those of us who know a little bit about the history of the club, and so I guess I would ask you, having looked at, I just was checking your attendance numbers for this year, obviously very good. Somebody described them on one of the blogs as people would show up during Armageddon to go watch a Chattanooga FC game. I know you're fairly recent, right? You don't go back to the beginning of the club, but what have you learned? What have you seen? How have you interacted with this passionate connection to the club? Because that's something that a lot of teams in American soccer can't figure out how to develop with their fans. Yeah,
I really wish I could teach a class on what it is to develop a culture and a fan base and a supporters group like it is. And I wasn't there in 2009 when it started. I went to my first game in 2013, and I always like to tell this story because I had a coworker that I was working with. It was like, you need to come watch the Chattanooga FC game. He knew I liked soccer and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, okay, cool. This is an amateur soccer team. I'm going to go watch one game and be done and never come back. Clearly, that's not the route we went down. But I walked into the game. I hear the fans chanting. I see the drum beats. I can feel just the passion that people have. And half the people there are just supporting Chattanooga. Half the people love soccer. It's like it's a good mix of all of that. And the work that the Chattahooligans, our supporter group does outside of the club, off the field, what they're doing with marches and just being in the community and helping out is unbelievable. And that's truly what this is about, more than just the soccer on the field. Don't get me wrong, I want to win games as much as anybody else does, and that's an exciting part of being in sport. But it's more than that. It's about what we can do in the community, what kind of help we can bring, and what kind of sense of bringing everybody together that you can do. And that's something that our fan base really has. They say it's so much more than just soccer. It's about a community and a family that they have now that they have outside of just their regular family.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing about Chattanooga and Chattanooga FC and shed a little bit of light on the experience of being an independent club in MLS Next Pro. So thank you so much for your time this morning and for jumping on the morning Kickaround, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. And just anytime you want anything else, let me know.
Thank you.
Will do. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for jumping in the comments. Lots of good questions there. Get that conversation going. Lots to learn about independent teams and MLS Next Pro. We have one more segment on the way. So if you're thinking about becoming a member, do so now. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button, please do so. All right, we're going to come right back and talk about the final game for North Carolina FC here on Morning Kickaround. Over the weekend, it was playoff soccer, and some teams' players had the end of their season come quicker than they'd like. But there's also an entire club that might have played their last game, not only for this year, but moving forward. North Carolina FC announced last week that they're not fielding a team next year, and not until the Division I comes around. And with their 0-2 loss to Rhode Island, their season and perhaps their existence is over. And for some on-the-ground notes and comment and reaction, we've got Tony Forman. Thank you so much for joining us here today. You were at the game. I'd love to hear what that environment, an unusual, a very American environment, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of when you got there, you didn't want to feel the sense of dread. I mean, I had first learned about, like everyone else, that the whole operations was shutting down from the Tom Bogart message that on social media everywhere, even before the club said anything. But you come there Saturday and said, all right, well, maybe this is the last game. Maybe if we win, it's not. But it's sitting there and all for the first time, and you're just hoping, well, let's see what we can make out of. But a sense of dread didn't really hit to me that this is the last game ever until that one goal from Rhode Island hit around the 80th minute. I said, well, pending a miracle here, This is it. And and just talking around with some supporters, and especially those who have been there since the days of the Cary Railhawks, sitting through whether it be USL, NESL revived, or USL again, just sitting there coming surreal ever since a rebrand of what could be the final game at Wake Med Park, maybe the final game as North Carolina FC. There might be a rebrand in the future when this USL Park happens, or I hate saying this, if this park doesn't happen, I don't know, that could have been it. We've seen this kind of thing happen before with Rochester and a couple of other USL clubs. So, yeah, you just want to make it a loud noise while you can.
Not a lot of history, Tony, of clubs saying we're going to go on a hiatus and we'll be back, and then actually coming back in any form that looks like the previous version. I think the Cosmos come to mind, although they're coming back, just not the way they were. And they, I don't know. It's always distressing. And first of all, I'm so sorry for North Carolina FC fans, and maybe fans. A lot of those people go back to the Railhawk days, and remember when this club was kind of a plucky second division, whatever you wanted to call it, American soccer team. There's some history here, right? And it's getting buried. I guess from your perspective, whether you talk to anybody at the game or not, what is the reaction to what Steve Malik and what the ownership group is doing? Does it make any sense to you?
So from one perspective, it makes sense since they'll be sharing this venue with the Courage. That they want to anyway. I think the NWSL is growing, and recently in the past few years, the Courage have had almost regular sellouts to their stadium. Almost, I think the last home game this year had around 11,000. That's max capacity at Wake Med. So it felt like to me that definitely sounds like a bigger stadium is in the works for the NWSL team. I think the Courage absolutely need that. For NCFC though, I don't know if going on hiatus had to do with the club either bleeding money or if something else is going on behind the scenes or anything like that. I will say the crowd that was there was roughly around 3,000 people, and that's unfortunately been almost the average attendance for North Carolina FC, whether they're in the championship or USL League One for the past few years, not including the pandemic years, which I know is third lowest in the USL, which I want to emphasize when I point out lowest. This is not me blaming the residents of Raleigh, Cary, anything like that, or even the hardcore supporters of the Oak City supporters. It's not on them. This is more of a thing that has to come with how you market your team and everything down to the wire. So I don't know if it's just an issue there.
Well, that's good. That's good background that I would like us to get and to share with our viewers here, Tony. I mean, your sense of whether the effort has been there. I mean, you mentioned Wake Med maybe not being great for the Courage because they could sell more tickets. They could be, nicer. They deserve a nicer venue based on the history of that club and the success that they have in that area. But obviously, if they're letting North Carolina FC sort of wither on the vine to benefit the women's team, nothing wrong with supporting the women's team, but if you're going to own both, you're responsible for both. Have they put the effort in to help NCFC be as successful as they could be?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not exactly like the product on the field's been terrible for the past few years anyway. I mean, they're USL League One champions a couple of years ago, and then got promoted up to the championship game. I mean, they had a great season this year. I just don't really see why the point of going on hiatus is going to do for anything, going to help this brand going forward. I mean, I don't think it's necessary, but I think this area could definitely thrive. A team in the Triangle could definitely thrive. A Division One team. I think, in a universe where David Tepper doesn't come in by the Carolina Panthers and buy the expansion rights for Charlotte FC, I think at one point you could have made the argument that maybe the Raleigh-Durham area could have had the Major League Soccer team for this area. There's definitely drive. There's definitely people who love the game around here. That being said, though, to just go on hiatus and hope that you can come back and bring it all together, I don't know if just building a stadium downtown is going to fix that. I have my doubts with League One is with I'm screwing up the name here, the new hire USL League, League One or Division One, as we're going to call it. If that actually gets to be considered to be in the Division One period besides MLS, I know that's a challenge going on that USL wants to do, and I'm welcome to the idea. I think maybe now would be the time to strike for USL to do that. I know there's been some negativity with MLS and US soccer, especially when it comes to the Open Cup tournament recently. So who knows? Maybe US soccer just says, okay, USL, you're Division One beside MLS. But that being said, I know they've only granted permission for NCFC to even try and be part of it and be part of the new league. I don't know if they'll get that status right away, especially if other USL clubs say, hey, we've got the support here and we've got the stadium built. Here's how we go here.
I just don't understand. So I look, not that the Courage couldn't push forward a stadium on their own merits, right?
Mhm.
And you look at CPKC in Kansas City, and there certainly is a precedent. Obviously, there's money questions that I'm not party to, but it seems to me that Steve Malik has been trying for the better part of 15 years to get a stadium built in Raleigh, has failed every single time. How does putting your men's team on hiatus encourage, unless it is sort of just a brinksmanship level of pressure that they want to apply to the city leadership and whoever might help them finance this stadium? Like, hey, if you don't build us a stadium, we won't have a men's soccer team. And oh, by the way, there's a Division One league, and you know what? Okay, we can't get to MLS, but we could still be Division One if you help me.
Yeah, and I really don't know what the case is going forward. I don't even know if he'll get this one kind of approved right away. This is just possibly one location that he's looked at. Who knows? Maybe he decides to try. Durham's only 20 minutes away. Maybe try getting it in Durham. I don't know what really the case he's trying to bring here with any sort of like bringing it forward to say, hey, we have this here. We're going on hiatus, but it will come back once you give me the stadium. Well, I don't know if it's going to work like that. I don't see it working like that at all. And he chose an interesting time to do this because the city of Raleigh's also been kind of opting to get, if it happens with expansion, Major League Baseball here. And, one of the sites he chose for it could also be potential MLB expansion as well. And I know that they have a smart group over there, and I know they've had backtrip with the local hockey team in the Carolina Hurricanes, who've had a much better relationship with the city of Raleigh than he has. So I really don't see how shutting everything down and trying to bring it back up if they get a stadium is going to bring any more support forward. I really don't know the answer to that.
Talking through this situation now here in North Carolina, and then we've talked to lots of different teams from across the country, and communication seems super important across the board, making communities feel like they're part of a team and getting as many connections between the community and the team as possible. So I think a great example of North Carolina FC not having that is the way they distributed this news. In the middle of the playoffs, they surprise the players and the fans in the midst of it. I mean, it wasn't telegraphed in any way.
So before Tony answers, and I want to add this on. Did you said you saw from Tom Bogert? That's before the club made any announcement, right? This was scooped by Tom Bogert and then confirmed by some other reporters before the club made any announcement. Do you feel like the club was pushed to announce this, and maybe they would have preferred to wait?
Yeah, I think they definitely would have. And I definitely wondered if there wasn't that wasn't picked up, if they had, just lost the game Saturday, and maybe ideally later after the season ended, they would have just announced it. Yeah, and I really don't like the logistics of how this whole thing was announced. To be fair, I think the fans that did support could have been way worse of how they're doing it, but they did seem to have the optimism to say, okay, this is just a hiatus. We'll support you guys. We'll be loud this Saturday and come out and, not be dismissive of this team and be bitter that, they're going on hiatus. It's not necessarily that they're leaving, or at least their hope is that they're not leaving. No guarantees on what the future looks like for NCFC in this area. But yeah, I just don't really know why they didn't really do it. And, the real loser of all of this is not just fans, but these players and staff and NCFC is just where my heart just grieves. To know that, to just find out in the middle of the playoffs that not only when your season ends, like, that could be your career. Now, some of these players may be picked up by other USL squads. Maybe some might get lucky enough to get in the MLS or other teams. And for some others, well, this could have just been their career, and it ends purely because ownership decides to fold the team, and that's where my heart breaks more than anything.
Yeah, that's a very tough pill to swallow, not for the fans, but for the careers, on the line. The reporting was that there's multiple players that had, next year in their contracts that are voided. They get 2 months now to basically figure out their career and their lives, which is unfortunate. And we should note that the USLPA is scheduled to have CBA talks with the league this week. So we'll see if anything plays out, but this is definitely ammunition for the USLPA, saying that the current status quo in the league is not favoring the players very well. And then last week when we booked you to get on the show, we weren't quite sure how the last game potentially of a team's history would play out. It seems that you're saying that the fans didn't really have a lot of vitriol or anything like that, more of a dread feeling.
Yeah. Well, they all showed up in the beginning before the match had said, I recalled one of the main announcers just came and saying, if this is our last game, let's be loud. Let's make it as loud as we can. And I imagine that's kind of what the attitude is. And I imagine, players on the field, same way, like, to quote the movie Major League, if this is it, then there's only one thing left to do. Let's go win the whole thing. So it definitely seemed like they were still like supporting everything, and they didn't seem to have any sort of like massive fan protests or anything like that. And they just wanted to be supportive for what was potentially the last game at Wake Med Park and what ended up being the last game. So, yeah.
I think that's tough to also expect them to like wait for a few years and then, build a bigger stadium at a higher level and expect more people to come. That seems kind of like madness though. But Tony, thank you so much for popping on to Morning Kickaround and giving us some firsthand account on the scene there of North Carolina FC's last for now game. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show.
Yeah, Robert, Jason, thank you guys so much.
All right, guys. Thank you for jumping in the comments. Some great stuff there. Unfortunately for North Carolina FC, but we'll see what happens in the future for them and what happens with this USLPA CBA negotiation. There has not been any progress from what we've heard. The union saying that really nothing has happened. Yeah. And so we'll see if anything changes this week there.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things up in the air around all the plans, and obviously the players are a major part of this. And if USL doesn't want to take care of the players, I'm not sure how they get across the line on all these things that they want to do. So it's worth watching all of those developments.
It's riding the passions of people, right? They're assuming in North Carolina that the passion for the fans will endure and they can just count on them being back. And then just like there's always a player following their dream. So they're assuming they can, treat them however they'd like. And there's still going to be more people chasing their dream. But we have reached the end of our show here today. Thank you everyone for jumping in the comments. And again, we didn't get any new members during the live show, but we are getting close to 100 members in the MK Ultras, and that would just be fantastic number to hit. Would love.
What are we going to give member number 100? I mean, if you sign up now, you won't be 100. So I don't want to incentivize people to wait. I want you to sign up now, but I don't know. We'll come up with something. We'll come up with something special for people who sign up, and maybe we'll even do like a random drawing instead. Like when we get to 100, we'll do a random drawing and we'll give something away. We could come up with something, Rob, right? We're creative guys.
Yeah, I occasionally have a good idea from time to time, so hopefully that'll come with this. And want to reward hitting the triple digits for our channel members would be absolutely awesome. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we got some more great guests and topics on the way the rest of the week before the holidays hit. So until Wednesday, everybody, enjoy your soccer.